afternoon. On behalf of the Orangeville Center for Entrepreneurship in the College of Business at San Francisco State University, I'd like to welcome you to our celebration. I'm Connie Marie Gaglio, Director of the program. So yes, I do exist. This afternoon, we are gathered to celebrate the academic achievements of the entrepreneurship students in the class of 2011. By the end of today's program, I hope you have a sense of what our students have gone through in the last 2 years. You'll also learn a little bit more about the journey that's in front of them from one of San Francisco State University's most successful entrepreneurs and venture capitalists, Gilman Louie. In addition, a few of our most recent graduates will share a few tips about how to make the transition, and then you'll hear from the students themselves. Feel free, we've got kids here. It's a family-friendly place. So if the kids need to walk around, that's fine. Don't try to shush them, as if you could anyway. But at San Francisco State University, I'd like to welcome you to our celebration. I'm Connie Marie Gaglio, Director of the program. So yes, I do exist. This afternoon, we are gathered to celebrate the academic achievements of the entrepreneurship students in the class of 2011. By the end of today's program, I hope you have a sense of what our students have gone through in the last 2 years. You'll also learn a little bit more about the journey that's in front of them from one of San Francisco State University's most successful entrepreneurs and venture capitalists, Gilman Louie. In addition, a few of our most recent graduates will share a few tips about how to make the transition, and then you'll hear from the students themselves. Feel free, we've got kids here. It's a family-friendly place. So if the kids need to walk around, that's fine. Don't try to shush them, as if you could anyway. But one of the most important lessons that I hope that our students have learned is that successful entrepreneurship is not a solo effort. The successful entrepreneur needs a very wide network of support and resources. And that support begins at home. So it is very fitting that we start this celebration by gratefully acknowledging the love and the support of the family and friends. So students, will you join me in thanking? Yeah. Entrepreneurs also rely on support and mentoring from the elders in the business community. And the excellence of our program would not be possible without the unfailing support of Sue and Bob Orangeville. And I'm very pleased that they're here with us today. Bob is a former owner of an advertising agency here in the Bay Area, and Sue is the person who made sure that all of the day-to-day business activities happened. Please join me in thanking Sue and Bob for all of their support for the past 13 years. Now, Bob Orangeville is our namesake, Orangeville Center for Entrepreneurship. And traditionally, he's always given us a little pep talk to start our celebration. So I'm going to ask him to do so today.
Connie Marie, I'm not sure I'm as peppy as you'd like me to be, but I am here. Let me say a couple of words about entrepreneurship in general. As you all know, this country was founded by entrepreneurs who were tired of being kicked around by the Brits and decided they'd start not a business but their own country. And they did a pretty good job of it. And we're still working on it, but we're going to get there. And let me give you just a couple of personal notes about how I got into this whole entrepreneurship thing. I was graduated from high school in 1944, and World War II was at its peak. And the Germans were shooting at everybody, and the Japanese were getting ready to shoot at us. So It was a very uncertain time, just like today. There are a lot of unsettled issues around the world today, and will continue to be. And I'm not sure any of you can solve that. If any of you can solve that, would you please move to Washington and do it? Anyway, how I got into this sort of thing was I suddenly realized that in 1944 that there was the federal draft was on, so if you were 18 years old, 17 years old, or 18 years old, you had to go into service. You didn't have any choice unless you were crippled or dumb, and I might have been dumb, but I wasn't crippled. So anyway, I decided I didn't really like the idea of hiding in an infantry suit and shooting at somebody behind a tree. So I said, well, maybe I'll see if I can get in the Navy. So I applied to the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis because I grew up in Baltimore. And I grew up to a middle-class family. It didn't have a lot of money, but my father worked hard at his job, and we got along okay. And then as the war moved on, I decided I'd really go for a career in the Navy, or at least trying to get in the Navy to get out of the draft. So I wound up applying to the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis. And I took the exam for it, but didn't know any Congress person, so you have to get a congressional recommendation to do that, and I wasn't able to do that. So then my next option was the Navy ROTC. Oh, I'm being needled here. This is my wife, Sue, incidentally, who has been with me for a lot of years. And so my first shot at entrepreneurship was, I realized I had to take a physical exam to get in the Navy ROTC, and I had weak eyesight. So a buddy of mine in school, his father was an optometrist. So I went to his father one day and I said, you have the Navy eye charts by any chance? And he said, well, of course I've got the Navy eye charts. And I said, can I borrow them? I have to take a physical with the Navy. And he said, of course. So I memorized the eye charts and passed the Navy physical exam. Please don't tell the Navy, they might come after me. And after that episode, I moved to New York because I wanted to try a new venue. Got a job in New York for an advertising agency, and stayed there until one day I came home, had an apartment with a bunch of guys in New York, and we didn't learn a lot, but we had a lot of fun living in New York. It was a good place to live as a young person, probably still is. I'm sorry, my back is to all of you. Can you hear me all right? Okay. I ran across I came out to San Francisco because that seemed like an interesting place to come compared to Baltimore. Baltimore was kind of a scruffy industrial seaport when I grew up there. It's gotten better since it's been fixed up since then, but I had nothing to do with that. And then I was living out here in San Francisco, working for a small advertising agency here in San Francisco, and across a commercial designer, a guy who was designing things, and so we decided, what the hell, let's start a company. I said, Bim? His name was Bim. Bim and Bob. How's that for a couple of guys starting a company? And anyway, we decided, what kind of company should we start? Well, we debated probably illegal as hell, but then we said, okay, let's start a design business. And we'll identify it as design for marketing. In other words, designing things that help people sell their company or sell their products. And I'd go out and sell them, and he'd design them. And it worked out pretty well. In the beginning, it was kind of slow going. And we networked like crazy and knocked on a lot of doors. And we borrowed some money from my father and my partner's father so we could pay the rent and hire a couple of people. We had like 6 people when we started the company. And we went to Wells Fargo one day downtown, the bank, and said, "We're starting a company. Can we borrow some money?" And this guy in this dark suit and tie and the whole shot looks at us and says, "May I see your balance sheet, please?" And we said, "What the hell is a balance sheet?" So we didn't know what a balance sheet was, but anyway, they lent us a little money, and we borrowed some money from my parents and my partner's parents, and we were able to pay the rent and hire a couple of people to try and start this business. And as I said, we knocked on a lot of doors and did a lot of networking, and we began to get some traction. Sitting next to me was our first receptionist. She was my wife, still is.
She didn't get much money.
She never got promoted.
Or paid.
What do you mean? You got to go home with the boss? So anyway, that was an interesting adventure, and we began to get some traction. Pretty soon we had like 65 people in our little office downtown, and a bunch of clients like Safeway and what's the big old company? Chevron and Bank of America, and so we were doing reasonably well. And so then one day, I got a phone call in my office from a guy from the United Kingdom who was in town, and he said he'd like to come talk about design research because we researched the designs we worked on. And I said, "Sure, come on by." So he came on by, and nice fellow. He had a nice, pleasant chat, and talked about design research for a while. And there was a lull in the conversation. He looks up at me and says, "By the way, you have any interest in your company?" I said, "Geez, I don't know. Hadn't thought about it." And so one thing led to another, and they expressed an interest in buying our company after they looked into it further. And they never saw a balance sheet, but they saw our books such as they were. They were pretty flaky books, to tell you the truth, because my wife couldn't be a bookkeeper. She was great on the phone, but a lousy typist. But she had other attributes, and she put up with me, which is something to say. And I'm being prompted here by my former secretary. And so we negotiated a price with the Brits, and I spent a fair amount of time in London talking with these guys, and they were great guys to do business with. They talked kind of funny and used funny words, but they were honest and straightforward and hardworking, and we had a lot of fun together. And got together, and we merged our business into their existing business. And that was basically the end of my entrepreneurship activities. And it went on from there. So I kind of retired a year or two after that and stayed with the company for a couple of years. And that was interesting, and said goodbye to a lot of the clients and good friends. Made a lot of friends over the years and wished them all well. And I've lost track with a lot of them, but some of them are still around.